there were these two identical twin boys, and one was like super, super optimistic, and one was super, super pessimistic. And the parents were really flummoxed by like how to deal with them because they were so different. And so they would do things like, try to encourage them, but it was always the same pattern of behavior. And so their birthday was coming up, and they went to a doctor, and they said, "What do you think we should do?" The doctor said, "Here's what you need to do. You need to give the pessimist a really, really great gift, and give the optimist a really, really yucky gift. To try to balance it out." Parents were like, "Well, all right, okay." So the birthday came, and they gave the pessimist this gorgeous, top-of-the-line bike. Just pristine, beautiful, expensive, perfect. And the first words out of the pessimistic child's mouth were, "Well, yeah, I'll probably crash it and break my leg." To the optimist, they gave a box of horse manure, beautifully wrapped. And he opened it up, and for a minute he looked puzzled. And then he ran outside, screaming, "You can't fool me! Where there's this much manure, there's a pony somewhere." Hence, where's the pony? So I think it's common in first world countries for us to forget how blessed we are. And if the word blessed has some charge to it for you, let me rephrase that. How lucky, how abundant, how easy we have it. You loan a DVD, your favorite DVD, you loan it to a friend, they move out of state and take it. That's okay, Freddy's or Barnes & Noble, they'll have it. You can go get it. Or you decide to bake cookies, and in the middle of baking, you're like, "Oh, I'm out of eggs." Jump in your car, drive to the grocery store, the local gas station. They've got eggs. We've got stuff. It's easy. And so our piles of manure are pretty manageable, our daily piles of manure. And yet I'm going to use the royal we complain. We still complain. We find ourselves being like that pessimistic kid where it's like we've got all this stuff and we're still like, "Yeah, whatever, I'm going to break my leg." So, God forbid, poor Jay. But here's the thing. So I know I bring up the Grand Canyon adventure a lot, and there's a reason that I bring up our Grand Canyon adventure a lot. It was incredibly life-changing in so many ways. For those of you who don't know, a few years back, 3 years, Heather and I went on a 15-day rafting trip through the Grand Canyon on the Colorado River. Bucket list, done, never have to do it again. But it changed my life. It changed me, it changed her, it changed us, it changed our lives. And so in regards to this topic, I want to refer this. So the first day, we left Flagstaff, we drove in a bus through gorgeous territory and not so gorgeous territory, but we get to the Grand Canyon, we go down in the canyon to where we're going in. There are our boats, there are our life jackets, there's our guides, and we get on the river and float down the river for the first day. And we got to the end of the first day, and I looked at Heather and went, "I could go home. I could go home now. This was magnificent. Just what I saw today, I'm full." And we had 14 more days to go. But it was phenomenal because it's just in that moment it would have been enough. Oh, I meant to tell you, the new printer prints everything double-sided and upside down. It's exciting. Where's the pony? The pony is in the new printer, even though I don't understand what it does. So it was just overwhelming. So the truth was, though, there was plenty to complain about on that trip. There was plenty to complain about. And here's just some treasured moments. But we could have complained that it was too hot, because it was. It was insanely hot. I could have been like, "My clothes are wet all the time," because it was true. I was constantly in dampness. And then this whole bathroom situation, let me just tell you, I won't even tell you, but it was challenging at times, and it was challenging. So all of these things were true. And yet, there was this overriding thing. We were floating down the Colorado River inside the Grand Canyon. How could we possibly complain about anything It was magnificent. It was God in action. It was so powerful. So any complaining that happened, like, where's our promised land of shade, was momentary, because it was like, oh, right, look where I am. Look at where, look at what I'm doing. So, yeah. So, the thing is, though, it doesn't have to be as grand as the Grand Canyon. It can be just our daily lives. It can be just our home. It can be just our work. It can be just the things that we do every day. And so where does it start? Guess what? It's either forgiveness or gratitude, right? So it's gratitude. It starts with gratitude for everything. And here's a technique that I've been trying for a long time to do, and I encourage you to try it, and that is to change the semantics from I have to I get to. I get to do laundry because I have clothes. Yeah. I get to go to work today, as many workplaces as you may have. I get to grocery shop at Costco. It's like, holy mackerel, what an experience of abundance Costco is. So, because the truth is there are people out in the world, and we all know this, who don't have clothes, who don't have washing machines, who don't have access to food, who don't have multiple places to work, who don't have vehicles, either public or their own, to get there. We have this crazy abundance all around us. And so even when we're not able to buy the food that we want, there are still ways to access. There's friends to ask. There's people to contact. We've got so much. We've got so much. And it's so easy to forget it. It's so easy to forget that in the midst of everything, there's a pony somewhere. We forget in our little lives that we're living a big, grand life. And so there was, I almost put a slide up for this, but I decided not to. When we lived in California, we lived in a little tiny town called Montera, which was south of San Francisco. And to get to Montera, you had to drive this road that people called Devil's Slide. I have no idea who would want to name a road that. So I used to call it Archangel Slide. Nobody knew what I was talking about. I'm like, oh, we live just past Archangel Slide. I'm like, where's that? I'm like, you may know it as Devil's Slide, but I do not speak that. So anyway, it was this road that was like 800 gazillion feet in the air, and one side was canyon with rocks that slid whenever they felt like it. And the other side was the edge of the continent. The end of America. And ocean. And I used to drive through this thing practically with my eyes closed. I'm just like, go, 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 go. Go as fast as you can so the rocks don't get you. And there was this one day, it happened to be July 4th, Sunday, that I was speaking in Alameda, so I had to go through Archangel Slide, through San Francisco, across the Bay Bridge to Alameda, and then come back the same way. It was July 4th, Sunday. We lived in a town that had a surfing beach. Yeah. I was stopped in Devil's Slide in unmoving traffic where there's no turning around. There's no changing your mind. You're in it. And so, of course, my experience was one of anger and frustration and anxiety. I felt trapped. And mostly, I just felt really afraid. I was like, if there's a rock slide right now, I'm dead. And I'm trying to problem solve. It's like, should I leap out of the car? Or should I crouch? What's the best way to survive an 800 gazillion foot fall off the end of America? And so finally, I just took a deep breath, the key to everything, and I rolled down my windows and I looked to my right. And there, in all of its splendor, was the Pacific Ocean. And it was a perfect summer, sunny day in Northern California, and the water glistened and was playing off the rocks, and the air smelled really good. And I turned up my music, and I thought, I'm free. I'm free. For this moment, I am free. And that's about how long that moment lasted. It was about a moment. And then I was like, I really want to get out of this traffic jam. But it was like this precious moment that I just wanted to, like, how long can I hold this? How long can I sustain this moment of bliss? And, you know, it's impossible to hold on to them. And yet there's something to be gained from all of the yuck that I was feeling, that I then moved out of the way to experience that moment of bliss. I did eventually get home. It took me over an hour. It's horrifying. But as I was thinking about this, like like physically moving what I'm feeling out of my way, I started thinking about this book by Ajahn Brahm. It's called Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung? He is a Tibetan monk. He's hilarious. He wrote this book of short stories, and it's just, he's brilliant. He's brilliant. And what inspired the title is he refers to this truckload of dung. It's what pulls us down. It's what weighs us down. So he talks about how he goes to the beach one day and he comes home, not really, but metaphorically, he comes home and there's this huge truckload of dung on his front yard. And so it's this pile of manure is all of life's hardships and challenges and pain and suffering. And a lot of times we find this pile of manure and we go, wait a minute, that's not my fault. It's not my fault these challenges are happening. They're happening to me. It's landing in my front yard. I'm buried in it. And it's stinky. And he goes on to explain that for some of us, in our confusion in what to do with this, we start picking up piles of it and putting it in our pockets and putting it under our shirts to carry it with us. And so what happens is we start alienating people, even our loved ones. They start to distance themselves from us because we're dark and we're depressed and we smell like manure. You know, we're stinky because we're carrying this. And so the guidance he offers is, get a wheelbarrow, get a big fork, get a big shovel, and that we don't have to move it, we get to move it. And load by load, we get to move it from our front yard to our backyard, our inner self, and we can use it to fertilize our garden, ourselves. We can use it to create beautiful things in our lives. And, you know, he brings up the fact that it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes gentleness. Sometimes we can't move all of it in one day. We want to. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can move a little load, and then I'll get back to it tomorrow. However, once we've done this, once we've moved it, and our garden is flourishing, when someone comes to us and says, you're never going to believe this, but I just got home and there's this huge pile of manure in my front yard, you can say, I've got the tools. I've got the wheelbarrow, the shovel. I'll come over, I'll help you. Move it load by load. So once we've done this, step by step, and created it and nourished it, we help others. We can hold the door open for the person behind us who's carrying a million things and is praying that somebody's going to do that. Or when we're in the grocery store and that woman behind us who's got 2 tired little kids and a grocery cart full of food and she's exhausted, we can let her go in front of us because she's managing a lot and she needs a miracle. And we're going home for a night by ourselves or with friends. We can swing the time. We can give her that miracle. We can give her that hope. And so it's about seeing, capital S, big S, seeing ourselves, seeing others, expanding our vision to take in all that's happening around us, the manure, the gardens, the ponies, all of it, and integrating into who we are in our lives. So a friend of mine, I love Facebook. I love Facebook. A friend of mine from Ohio that I never would be in touch with from a long time ago reconnected recently on Facebook, and he posted this observation from his day, and I love this. He wrote, "I had an early meeting today. It was pouring rain. I pulled out of my garage and I hit the close button, anxious to get to the freeway. The garage door almost closed, then stopped and opened up. I tried it again. It happened again. I got out of the car. I walked to inspect the tracks and the chain in the rain, and I noticed that a small weed had grown, apparently overnight. And it was right in the path of the seeing eye that allows the door to close. So I pulled out the weed, I got back in my car, I'm all wet, I pushed the button, and the door closed. And I was on my way to a successful day. Do you have small weeds in the way of your big progress? If you just get uncomfortable and pull them, would you be able to close a door and move on to something important?" Mind blown. I just love it. First of all, I just love that he shared it. And then, secondly, it's so true. It just holds so much truth. And one piece of it that struck me for today is this idea of perception, of what's important, what is small, what is big, what I judge as important. And I know people that can move through situations with grace and ease that others would struggle and suffer through. It's the same situation. It's the same situation. And yet we move through it completely differently. At two of my workplaces, this past week, the same conversation took place between a few of us. You're familiar with this conversation. It's the "I'm excited about winter" versus "this is my last winter in this godforsaken place." It started snowing, and it was like, "Yay, it's snowing. Oh my God, I hate it here. It's snowing." It's like, wow, it's just snow. It's not personally against you. It's just snow. I went to get my tires changed over last week, and the vibe in there was completely, totally different. There were people who were like, "I'm so glad I got in early. I'm so glad I'm doing this." And there were people like, "I hate living here. I have to change my tires over." You get to change your tires over. You get to live in a place where it's beautiful, and it snows, and there's ice. Same situation, and yet there was enthusiasm and readiness, or annoyance and resentment. And even just in that, I brought, of course me, I'm the ultimate mommy, I brought my laptop and a book, and I brought snacks and some water. I was ready to camp out all day there, And there's this one guy who was just like, "Oh, I've been here 2 hours," and he's just pacing and walking around and kicking tires. And my changeover took less than an hour. And I offered him snacks. I'm like, "Oh, are you hungry? Do you want some snacks?" It didn't help. There was no pony for him. No pony for this man. So what is a large experience for someone might be nothing to someone else. And so when my friend suggests close the door and move on to something important, it would seem that there might be individual interpretations of what important is. What is worth letting go of the yuck for? What are we wanting to experience? And since there's no way to ignore it, I'm just going to talk about the elephant in the room. The manure for this past week has been Mercury retrograde. There, I said it. There was a full moon, a lunar eclipse, and Mercury retrograde, all at the same time. For those of you who are not impacted by this, I want to be you. I want to live your life, because it was kicking my butt. And so, fine. When I heard that Mercury was going retrograde, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do some research, find out what it's going to be like this time. I read this whole thing about how it was going to be gentle and introspective and so deeply powerful. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, that's not how it's been. That's not how it's been at all. It's been a big pile of manure and no pony. And no pony. So I thought, here I am. I'm buried. I'm buried in my pile of manure. It's happening to me. It's not my fault. It's Mercury doing it to me. And I really wanted to be bigger than that. I really wanted to be that person who was going, Mercury, no biggie. I wanted to be that person. And I just was like, here I am with my wheelbarrow, digging my way out again. And so I remembered, while I was doing that, while I was digging myself out, I remembered this story. Again, perception. There was this man who was driving down a road, hairpin turns, kind of like Devil's Slide. And hairpin turns, and he comes around this one turn, and this woman comes whipping around the turn right in his lane, almost head on with him. And as she flies by him, she yells, "Pig!" He's like, "Oh my God, you almost hit me? And you called me a pig?" So he's like, "Sow!" Back at her, right? And as he's looking back, yelling at her, he turns her corner and runs right into a giant pig sitting in the road. So much for being helpful. So what we are thinking is hurting us might actually be helping us. And I wrote that I'm going to say that twice, and I italicized it. What we think is hurting us might actually be helping us. And now the disclaiming clarification. Please, I'm not encouraging you to stay in an abusive relationship or workplace that is toxic to you or hurtful to you. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that the world is not against us. Life is not attacking us. I'm saying that when we get upset about the weed that's blocking the electric eye on the garage door, or the driver who appears to be reckless but is actually trying to warn us about a pig in the road, or mercury, or winter, what I'm trying to say is we're missing the point. We're missing the point. We're missing the pony. Just like me, trapped in traffic on Archangel Slide, we're missing the moment. This past week, with all the lunar and planetary activity, I felt myself struggling with life. And I was actively seeking moments of gratitude. And I was just looking for any reason to be thankful, anything. And I stumbled by accident, don't you love the universe, by accident, across this singer-songwriter. Her name is Ellis, E-L-L-I-S. And I started listening to her music, and I thought, this is spot on. Like, if I could write a song, I would write her songs. Like, she's writing these amazing songs that are speaking right to the core of me. And the cool thing is, I mentioned to a friend, I'm like, we should bring her up to Alaska. And then I emailed her website to say, you should come to Alaska. And then my friend went and emailed her agent and said she should come to Alaska. And within 3 days, my friend and the agent are communicating, and I'm actually emailing with Ellis, talking about coming up here. And I'm like, reason to be thankful. And it's the universe acting on what I was doing. I was sending out, give me reasons to be grateful, let me act on that, and now the universe is acting back. One of her songs that's kicking my butt this week is based on a parable, and I'm going to close the talk with this parable and some thoughts on it. But you might be familiar with the parable, so stick with me. But there's a woman running, and she's running away from tigers. And she's running, and the tigers are getting closer, and suddenly she gets to the edge of a cliff. And she looks over the cliff, and there's a vine. So she climbs down, and she's hanging onto the vine. And there are tigers looking down at her. And as she's holding onto the vine, she looks down, and there are tigers circling below her. So she's tigers above her, tigers below her, and then she hears this little munching sound. And she looks up, and there's a little mouse chewing on the vine. And as she's dangling there, looking at the tigers, above, below, looking at this mouse, she turns to the right, and there's a little patch of strawberries. Perfect, ripe. And she picks one, and she eats it, and it's delicious. And she thoroughly enjoys it. There are always going to be tigers above us and tigers below us. Whether it's self-created or something that's actually happening, or in terms of the parable, which actually is talking about birth and death and life in between. When we take a moment and we take a breath and we look around us and we reframe our thoughts about the moment we're in, our perception shifts. We can remove the weeds. We can use the wheelbarrow to transfer the manure from our front yard to our garden. We can feel inspired by the ocean. We can totally, thoroughly appreciate the strawberry. And most importantly, we can find the pony. Let's do some praying. So starting out with that breath that's ours to take, the first blessing of each day. When we awaken to consciousness and we breathe, and we can do that on our own. There are going to be moments in our lives that feel like tigers above us and tigers below us. There are going to be moments in our lives when we feel like an entire truckload of manure has been dumped right on us. There are going to be moments in our lives where we feel suffocated by all that's going on around us. And the truth is, it's all an illusion. It feels real, don't get me wrong. It feels so real. And we feel like we're drowning in it. And yet there's that moment that we all come to eventually. That moment of just a little bit of awakening of, wait, this isn't what's really happening. This isn't what's really happening. I'm supposed to be paying attention to something else. There's something more here. Spirit's calling me for something more. So let me dig my way through. Let me move the weed. Let me hang on to that vine and enjoy the strawberry. Let me do whatever I need to do to get through this moment. And remember all I have to be grateful for. To remember there's work for me to do on this planet just by being on it. Spirit calls us, each and every one of us here, calls us here by name, by soul, for a purpose. No one is here by accident. Each one of us is here on purpose. And simply by remembering who we are, why we are, and what we're here to do, we shed light. We shine the way for others. So as we're guided on that path of our lives, we see people ahead of us and we say, yes, I want to be where they are. And yet we're still shining a light for the folks who are coming up behind us, saying, come this way. Pass me if you wanna. Because we are all just walking each other home. And so I bless the manure, and I bless the weeds, and I bless the tigers, and I bless Devil's Slide, and I bless Mercury retrograde. I bless all of it. I bless all of it. Because through that, I get to enjoy the strawberry. I get to play with that wonderful pony. I get to hear beautiful music. And I get to figure this stuff out with all of you. We are so lucky to be here. With gratitude for this life, I simply say thank you. And bring it on. Amen. Ashe.